this time with something different, but something I weirdly wanted to talk about before the blow up from the fandom about Jax being a main character. Because before Gooseworks confirmed it, I had seen many people upset that Jax was getting so much more attention than the other characters, and like, don't get me wrong, I can sympathize as my main squeeze is Kinger, but it was always kind of there that Jax and Pomni would be somewhat the main focus. It just seems unfair due to how limited the show is and how the other characters are set up. Also, before we get into it more, I do want to say, do not harass Gooseworks or anyone on the team, and please stop saying that she favors Jax and that's why he's more of a focus, when we all know Gooseworks has had this project out of the oven before the animation process started. She's pretty good about having a set plan, and if it seems like she favors Jax due to her drawing him a lot, then I feel that kind of should have clocked you in that he was going to be important all along. So, yeah. Anyway though, the reason I say it was slightly obvious is due to 3 things. 1, the length of the season. 2, plot progression. And 3, overall character usage. Because think about it, this season is only 9 episodes, and based on the structure of episode 1, 2, and kind of 3, we're basically speed running through the makeup of a typical season. Like, the first few episodes of a regular season are character introductions and world building episodes. As episode 1, we get introduced to everyone and their surface level characters, along with a bit of world building thrown in, thanks to Pomni being the audience type character, as she knows nothing about this place. And then episode 2 is the world building setup, as we get to see how this world functions, or in this case how the adventures work, as it's the main point of what the characters are doing day to day. Plus, it also drops a bit of hidden lore on the overall game mechanics, which normally wouldn't be brought up till a little closer to the middle of the season, as that level of lore would be the tip off that the plot's about to kick in. And even though Pomni isn't interacting with the cast, we do see more of the characters who are used to each other interacting without her. But we also do see how they interact with her little bit by little bit. And we see Jax is slightly more involved in the adventure, as he's the reason Pomni is thrown out of the car and falls into the in-between, and is the reason they're able to get out of the chocolate pit. We also see his key trick again that was established in episode 1. And again, in episode 1, Jax is the one to move things along, because he's the one that helps Pomni and Ragatha go find, I'm so sorry, I forgot the clown guy's name, but they go to find him. They find out that he's abstracted, and Jax runs off, which kicks into the B plot that's going on, and then the A plot and the B plot find each other because of Jax. But again, we do see his key trick again that to me at the time felt important due to it being brought up back to back. Now, episode 3 is tricky, as it seems to be a combo of a typical world building setup and now a more focused dynamics episode, as we now follow Pomni and Kinger and their dynamic, and the lore drops on how Kinger functions in the dark and how he kind of knows more than what he seems. And just like Jax, plays into the fact that this world is a game, which this is all a good thing, as it shows us a less basic intro to Kinger's character. And while that's happening, we learn more about Zooble, a character that has shown zero interest in interacting much with anyone or even leaving their room. Now, normally this would be 2 separate episodes, since Pomni is the new character and person who has to make us interact with others, but again, the length of the whole season has to speedrun the structure of a typical 3-season type show. But it does what it can, and has Kane take over Pomni's spot, which personally I really like, as Kane also kind of feels like an audience type character due to being an AI that wants to learn what they can do to make Zooble happy and is really interested in humans. So episode 3 to me is roughly the mid-season finale due to its setup, and that it drops quite a bit of lore from both Kinger and Kane, and when we get to episode 4, you can feel the change in the overall vibe. Yes, Pomni is still building a dynamic with these characters, but we've now reached the established now vibes. Everything's still new to us and Pomni, but she's actually playing along more, and this is also where we get more insight into Gangle and the starting point of Jack's downward spiral and the beginnings of him being moved to the main character status. Which, let me say real quick, main character doesn't always mean front runner character. When we watch shows and we see the posters where they have the main group and they're usually tagged along and doing stuff, stuff, that's not usually what that means when it comes to main characters exactly, which is why you hear me always say main character, secondary character, background character. Like, they're all characters that have a focus, but there's a level to them. Jax at this moment is a main character, but he is a moved to the front main character as the story goes on. That is his involvement gets pushed more and more as we continue to move on to the plot and lore driven side of the show. He's not a front runner like Pomni is. Pomni is the front runner that we follow around. That's who we're attached to. Jax is just now being moved into secondary main character status. Like, that's why I feel crazy when people talk about main character this, main character that, and I'm like, there are levels to a main character. There are levels to how main characters are structured with each other. Like, we know from the Owl House, Luce is the main character, and Ida and King are the secondary main characters, because we follow them just as much as we follow her, but they are constantly established as being the main characters. But it's like, no, Luce is at the top, Ida and King are like right behind her. It doesn't mean that they're not main characters. It just means that they're not the front runners like Pomni is. Pomni is the front runner, Jax is the secondary main character. It's just taking a while for him to catch up. So yeah, anyway, yeah, like I said, episode 4 is the in the now vibe stage of the season. Pomni is slightly more involved in the world and the characters, and even though during the episode she's doing her own thing, we do see that her and Gangle like the idea of more chill adventures, which is a nice setup to the later part of the episode. But this episode, instead of being a Pomni and Gangle focused story, it's more so a character focused episode, and to me at least, a commentary on fast food working environments being a pit of loneliness, since even though they're all together, they're all doing different tasks and not really talking to each other, plus the added irony of Gangle kind of doing what Ragatha does due to the happy mask, and realizing no one likes the fakeness of it, like, really hits hard for me in terms of Ragatha. But anyway, while this is a Gangle focused episode, we do see that it's also the starting point of Jax getting moved to the front, as everything they're doing is making him more limp and kind of bored, and in all of this happening is going so far as to ask Pomni a question that surprises her. And I also think that this is the starting moment of why Pomni gravitates towards Jax in later episodes. Anyway, this episode feels like the start of a whole new season due to the difference in tone and setup and the deeper talks and mentality of certain characters. And don't get me wrong, I get why this episode made everyone assume we'd get more like it, but with this episode being only the 4th one in and having about 5 more to go with a cast of 7 characters, I didn't really expect it to be more like it, as I just assumed we'd go back to the A plot and B plot style and have the one-on-one again for characters to reflect and develop on their own, like episode 2 and 3, and we did, kinda. And I say kinda because episode 5 feels like a continuation of episode 4, where again, all the adventures are the suggestions, where each adventure is a look into who the person who suggested it are. And as we keep going, we see Jax moving more towards Pomni by messing with her and even putting her as the president in his own suggestion, and even keeps talking to her in Gangle's suggestion, and is even the one to make them skip it to go to Kinger's stargazing suggestion, where he just asks the most out-of-pocket question ever to Pomni about Gangle now slightly being buddy-buddy with Zubul. So this should have been like the clock-in moment that things were really about to change for Jax, because when Pomni questions him, he shuts it down, to which Pomni again asks if he actually has friends, and I often wonder if she meant like back in the real world, but Ragatha drops one hell of a lore bomb that Jax in fact does not have any friends anymore. And that moment right there is Jax officially moving into the focal front with Pomni, because this now makes him very intriguing to Pomni in like 2 different ways. One where she feels bad because Ragatha just dropped one hell of a lore bomb, and another part where she's more curious about him because he's done so many weird things compared to everybody else. But after this suggestion, they do end up sticking together the rest of the day. Plus, the intermission even focuses on Jack's friendship lore too, so it's even more evidence he's been moved up. And I get why this is such an issue for a lot of people, because it feels like such a huge jump, but there was a lot of build-up to this moment. But the last 2 episodes prove this even more as we focus on Jax and Pomni teaming up, and even getting more lore from Jax on the physics of the game, and get to see the downward slip into him abstracting to the point he even tells us that people who abstract become awful and hard to be around, which gives us a 50-50 split at the time of the episode that it's possible Jax could be abstracting, or this is just his overall attitude. But episode 7 kind of answers that immediately as we see he is in fact on the verge of abstracting, which this is a very important lore type moment because we didn't know much about abstraction. We only knew the final stages of what it was and what happened. We don't know the build up to how it comes about. So far, Jax is the only one that has given us hints or lore or whatever we can scrounge from him in order to figure out how this happens. We do get some from Kinger, but it's only about how the abstracted are perfectly calm in the dark. That's all we really get. Now, episode 5 and 6 are clearly meant to be the mid-season of, like, say, season 2, and the final episode of season 2, as we fully moved on to the lore/plot stage, which means we have now officially established who's most important to the story, and while it might piss people off that Jax is important, he has always, unfortunately, been set up to be so. He's also the one who sets up a lot of the action in each episode. He's the one who's shown to have a better understanding of the circus, and sure, Kinger too, but unfortunately Kinger isn't in a sound state of mind to be much help. He's also the only one whose key trick will end up being important later. He's also the one to notice that Kane shouldn't be able to change things about them and even questions it out loud. He's also shown more interest in Pomni than any of the other characters. Yes, Ragatha also showed interest, but her constant over-the-top, everything is fine, just ended up pushing Pomni away, which I feel makes so much sense for a character like Pomni, at least from my perspective. I mean, if I'm trapped in a world I don't understand, Ragatha is not at all who I would gravitate towards to feel better. I'd probably either lean more towards Zooble or Jax as they feel the most normal to me. Sorry, Gangle fans, but if I had to be around her and she's constantly sad, it would just make me sad and I'd end up losing it. Anyway, it stands to some reason that Pomni would lean more to Jax in some way, as his personality, while awful in real world standards, does somewhat feel normal in a situation like this. Like, the way that Jax acts about being trapped in this world, he knows that he's trapped, and he knows that, like, whatever did this to them, or however this is horrible, but he doesn't let it bother him to the point where he acts non-himself, if that makes any sense. Like, he feels like he's acting normal, and that would make me feel calm and normal in some weird way, whereas Ragatha doing too much would just make me nervous and, like, spiral. Plus, and this is where the character stuff kicks in, because I feel the reason Jack was always meant to be moved to the focal point has to do with the characters themselves. I mean, Zooble, for one, shows no signs to interact with anyone on screen, and often runs off before an adventure happens. It's only till the suggestion episodes does Zooble start kind of hanging with the group. Gangle is oddly the same, though she's not involuntarily trying to not interact with the group, but more so just staying away from Jax and a little bit of Ragatha. And like, we do see that when she does hang out with the group, she's more attached to Zooble, which kind of leaves Jax to find a new person to mess with, aka Pomni. And then there's Kinger, who's mentally just not there right now to interact with the group the way he would have done if Kane hadn't messed with him so much. And with no one knowing that he functions better in the dark and him constantly hiding in his fort, it would make it a little difficult to interact with a character that does that. So yeah, all the little things that the characters do are going to end up making Pomni gravitate to either Ragatha or Jax, as they actively want to talk to her and go out of their way to say anything to her, whether Jax realizes this or not. And had Ragatha been a bit more honest, I'm sure Pomni would have leaned on her more, but Jax, having not fully showing his cards yet, ended up winning. Plus, with Ragatha doing what she did, I'm pretty sure that ended up swaying Pomni to Jax. Anyway though, all I'm really saying is it makes sense for Jax to have always been a main character because he was set up to be one, or at the very least a plot pusher. I mean, half the plot happened because of him, and again, he's our window into the abstraction as he's the closest one to it happening to, and the one Kane has decided to mess with mentally. For why though? I'm not sure. And yeah, again, I get it, it sucks that we won't really ever get to see like super deep dives into the other characters, and it now feels like the Jack show, which to me, the only reason I feel like it feels that way is because of the long wait and not rewatching all the episodes. Because when you go and rewatch the episodes and you watch the new episode, a lot of stuff makes sense. But when you just watch the episode and don't come back to it and you wait a long period, you forget a lot of things. So that's why I feel a lot of people assume that this is the Jack show when he's always been set up to be a new focal point, you know? But yeah, again, I get where people are coming from, but this is still Gooseworks' story, and this is how she wrote everything was going to go down. And while, yes, it's a speed run of a fully formed possible 3-season show, I still weirdly think that it's great how it's been set up. And while, yes, Jax is getting a little bit more than everybody else, I still feel like the characters were given the space to be characters, to have different dynamics, to interact with each other in ways that, like, most people would not do, in favor of the plot and just, like, instant gratification. You know what I mean? The show itself does not feel like instant gratification. It feels like everything is making its way to the big finale, and I, for one, cannot wait to see how it ends. Anyway, though, that was my 2 cents. I will see you guys next Wednesday, where I might just rant about Vaggie, since y'all say I sound like her, but I also have, like, some things to say. But for now, I'm just gonna say, bye! Also, thank you to the other members. You have my whole heart. Everyone else, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Follow me on my socials right here, and if possible, hit that join button or super to join the Board of Teeth. It really helps out the channel and me. I hope you all have a super fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!